Hello, everybody. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Campaign Terrain. Hi, Questboard Terrain. Hi, Lisa. And hi, Loosely Collected. Hope you're all doing great. And welcome to the first history stream for 2026. And I'm happy to welcome back Franco, Kyle, and Dr. Tom. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Just fine.
Okay. We promised would not be talking much about Crusades today, but apparently we started in the spirit of the Fourth Crusade because some technical difficulties. People were in the wrong room. Franco seems to have disappeared.
That's okay. You asked how I was doing. While Franco is teleporting back, I can tell you right now, I know we're more games of history. As an American football fan, I'm in shambles at the moment.
Ooh, what happened?
Oh, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. All my family is from upstate New York, and we got dealt a divisional playoffs loss in one of the worst officiated games that I have ever seen. Like to the point that people who usually root against us are like, that's some of the worst officiating we've ever seen. Congrats to your Seahawks, though, because they did great. I did not think the 49ers were going to pull it out against you guys, but I also did not think the refs were going to cheat us again out of a spot in the. It was bad. It was really bad. Yeah,
okay.
It was awful, but I'm here, and that makes me very happy. So
you're literally talking Chinese to me right now, but yeah, I'm happy you're happy. Anyway,
me too, buddy. Me too.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about knightly orders, orders of chivalry, and that kind of thing. So to keep things a bit sensible, we're going to stick to the European context, because to be honest, I know that chivalry exists in other cultures, but I think that the orders of chivalry are mostly a European thing, if I'm not mistaken. And we're going to stick around up to maximum 17th century, because after that it kind of gets pretty boring. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Sure. It's really boring. I love that. History just gets boring about 1700.
Not history in particular, but specifically with knightly orders and stuff, don't become really like gentrified clubs, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, they were already kind of like murder-fied gentlemen's clubs anyway, right?
Yeah, but then they lost the murdery bits, and after that it gets me.
The proliferation of firearms generally has that effect on dudes on horses.
Okay, so where do we even start? Maybe let's talk about what a knight is before we start packing them into collections of knights.
That's a really good idea, actually, because that changes pretty drastically depending on like where you are in history. Like, are the Normans who fight in 1066 knights? And like, I would argue, yeah, right, technically. I mean, they're heavily armored cavalry. They're mostly nobles. Like, they have all of the hallmarks of like what we would think of as a knight, but like when we think about pop culture, my mind does not immediately jump to the Normans. You know what I mean?
Or at least not until later Normans.
Right. Not until not until later Normans, when they're like, Richard the Lionheart is technically kind of a Norman in a lot of ways.
But, yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Franco,
no, I mean, I think that's a really good point. It's sort of like arguing about the Renaissance. It's like it starts in different places at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one of the, they always say that one of the reasons that, the idea of the knight sort of in the classical sense got started very practically with the church preaching the peace of God. But it doesn't seem to have sort of been picked up in different places. Like not everybody went, oh, wait, yeah, that's what we need to do. And there's a logical conclusion to this in, the orders of chivalry. So it's kind of a situation where you almost have to look at it sort of region by region, it seems like. Some places just hit it quicker.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's good for us to like establish some ground lines, right? Like, in order to be a knight, like I think we're all in agreement, you have to be mounted on some sort of there has to be some sort of cavalry. That does open up an interesting question, because there are like Persian elephant cavalry, basically, like up till I forget when in the Middle Ages. Is that a knight? like
Yeah.
mentally speaking.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because like
I don't think that you have that just because you're a noble and you're sitting on a horse and you're fighting, I don't think that makes you a knight.
I always thought it was more like something, a title that gets put in. No, Franco, I don't know if there's like a textbook definition or like an official thingy, but I figure it was like, hey, if someone says you're a knight, you're a knight. Like someone with a metal head says you're a knight, you're a knight.
well, the other thing too is like, isn't there like
I'm not hearing very well actually today. Sorry, Karl.
Okay, I think Franco might have lost sound, I think.
Yeah. Well,
yes. I'm losing most of the conversation here. Sorry, guys.
Well,
might try reloading again, I guess.
let me see if I can figure out. Keep talking between yourselves. I'll try to see if I can
while
figure it out.
Franco is doing that, I do want to say, well, Franco and Karl are trying to get that sorted. I do think the one key part, like when I was thinking about like what kind of knightly orders I wanted to discuss, like as part of the stream, the concept of religion keeps popping up, at least for me, right? There has to be some sort of religious connotation or connection to a knightly order, I think, in some way, shape, or form. Like I know there are hedge knights, right? Necessarily, and they are knights, I would argue. But like when we're talking like a proper knightly order, it feels like there is some sort of connection to an organized religious force, at least historically from what I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
That does mean though too, like we were talking about Europe, Karl, but like there are a lot of really interesting, like what I would argue are Muslim knights. Now, obviously they wouldn't necessarily call themselves knights, but like if you are a cataphract in service to Allah, like that feels knightly to me. Whether or not we're duking it out in Europe or on the opposite side of the crusade notwithstanding, like that also feels kind of knightly to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I was like, man, like there's some sort of religious connotation. Obviously there's religious oaths that you take when you are knighted, but like that to me feels like a strong place to start.
I guess part of the thing you have to come to grips with is, it's the old duck thing. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But at the same time, I think you're right. There's something that sets apart a knight, especially a knight in the military orders, from, these analogs. A cataphract might be knight adjacent, but I don't think he's not performing necessarily for the same reason, Yeah. So I think I tell you where I sort of started this was that, to be specific, in the 1050s, when there was a fight going on for southern Italy, basically. It's sort of a three-way fight between the Byzantines and the Pope and Norman adventurers. At one point, the Normans were moving north towards Rome, and the Pope actually, and we're not really sure, there apparently isn't a whole lot of documentation, actually created something called like the Order of St. Peter. And it's not really clear if that is like the precursor of what we think of as knightly orders, or if it's just, I've got a bunch of people I've grabbed off the streets of Rome and I've given them, some weird grab bag of weapons and told them to go fight the Normans. But, and it doesn't seem to have survived or anything. But it is at least, like the Templars, like the Knights Hospitaller, it is at least an armed group that is specifically reporting to the Pope. And that's what you get with certainly the orders that are founded during the Crusades and later. But that, again, that sets it apart from some of the sort of what you might want to call national military orders. So, and then of course, it's not ironic, it's sort of logical. Who are these, the Order of St. Peter being sent out to fight? They're being sent out to fight the Normans, who of course, 40 years later, are going on crusade.
Yeah.
So that the idea is clearly sort of percolating, at least through that part of Europe.
I do like, by the way, that like the conversation of like, is a cataphract knight adjacent gives the same energy as like when you're driving and you're like, hey, can we get McDonald's? Your mom's like, we have McDonald's at home. It's like, no, we have knights at home.
Right. Hey, that guy looks familiar, or what he's doing looks familiar. You know,
Right.
I mean, and you certainly get into that during the Crusades, right? You know, Saladin gets called a knight so many times, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well,
It's
and
clearly not actually a knight.
Guys, hang on a sec. Franco, can you sound off, please?
Excuse me.
Okay. No, just checking if we could get sound. Yeah, sorry about that. So,
is he back? Do we have to go?
Okay, I think I've entered the conversation again.
yes.
I'm hearing you guys.
Yeah, good.
Sorry about that.
Oh,
Okay.
dude, we're just glad to have you back, man.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so as I asked you earlier, is there like a textbook
Apologies
definition?
for that. I followed the bits of what you were saying.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, like, look, technology is very rarely on our side, but sometimes things line up. So we're saying, is there a textbook definition of what a knight is?
Yeah,
I
know
don't
we
think
kind of
there's
got
a
away from
one
that.
size fits all textbook definition. No.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, okay, we're
I
just going
followed what Tom was saying about the Order of St. Peter in the 1000s.
Yeah, I doubt that
Are you still
that
hearing
most
me?
of those guys looked like knights. Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
to, I mean, that one was literally
Okay.
basically Hastings thrown together mercenary company, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been probably an embarrassment to later knightly orders. But somebody said, "Hey, that was a good idea," you know. But yeah, I mean, you know, to go back to what you came up with, Karl, or Kyle, the idea of are the guys that are fighting on the Norman side at Hastings are those knights? And I kind of agree with you. I think they look like at least like proto knights, you know. It's important. There's never any question of whether or not that army is going to have heavy cavalry. They're going to have heavy cavalry. They are going to, by and large, be landowners in various parts of Northern Europe or the sons of landowners, because you can't equip that without having money. So they certainly are the raw material of knights.
Okay, but to rewind a bit,
right.
if you take these Normans, okay? I mean, they're sworn to serve their boss. They've got money, they've got the equipment, they're possibly an elite group within their society. I mean, like, I think that checks most of the boxes for knights, no?
Yeah. And of course, eventually it will get so codified that you are forced by law in England, at least, to become a knight if you own a certain amount of property.
All right.
Right.
And if you don't, the king starts fining you.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense too. I would want to be a knight if I could. If I'm going to do anything, I want to be on the thing that gets me out of situations as fast as humanly possible and encased in steel.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
If I'm going to be required to fight for the king, which I do think is another thing we have to talk about in terms of like the requirements of a knight, right? Like being a knight goes along with feudalism, right? Like if I'm being required to fight, every so often, I'm doing the best. I'm spending a fortune on my armor and my weapons. Heck yeah. I don't want to have to like wake up one day and be like, hey, I need you over like 2 duchies down, setting fire to some villages or slugging it out with like, I don't know, Corsican pirates. I'm encased in steel. Let's do it. Like if I'm going to have to do it, I'm doing the best thing I can. Which I do think it's also important to point out with the knightly orders, because some of them take armor and weapons to like the next level, and I kind of appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing to bear in mind is that even as we talk about like the structure, so like you're beholden to your your lord, who may or may not be the king, usually isn't actually, but this is also a way for younger sons to climb the ladder. It's sort of an auxiliary ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you distinguish you're not going to inherit much from your father. Think of the Hotvilles, right? You're not going to get anything out of your dad. He has nothing. Once you have 12 sons, you can't divide it up between them. So you have to find another way. And the way in this society is to display your fighting prowess, have a lord or the king say, wow, you're really good. I'm going to knight you. That was a hell of a thing you did. And now you've got a higher status than just, oh, I'm the 9th Hotville kid.
Yeah. I would also like to point out too, this is a lot of times, like at least from the research that I was doing in preparation for this, some of like my favorite knights in history, and I didn't really ever realize this, but some of my favorite knights in history are like 3rd and 4th and 5th children, right? Yeah. And a lot of times, like too, that's because like if you are going to have multiple kids, there's always a pathway to like the clergy, for example, or like to a business, for example. But at some point, like if you don't have that path or that privilege, you're only going to have, the support of your family for so long, whether that's like economic support or social support, right? The kind of stuff that like gets you into high society meetings or places. Like you're going to have to develop a skill. And if you already have the arms and armor that have been supplied to you by your family, it's kind of like generational battlefield wealth.
Yeah.
But really, like I'm looking at some of the knights that I really loved, and I was like, oh, like you inherited arms and armor from your family. You have no other transferable skills. Yeah, of course you're going to become a knight of some kind, right?
Yeah, there are not a lot of pathways.
No. if you have a really good hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
If I have a really good lance, everyone starts to look like a ruffian. I'm just like, whatever. That's great. It is fun. But anyway, I think that's a good segue though to like start talking about some of the knightly orders, because there are some I always forget, Karl. Are we allowed to swear on this show?
Yeah. I'm allowed.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Because there are some batshit knight orders.
Like, yeah, I mean there are some seriously
insane ones, dude.
Yeah.
I was like, how are you people allowed to function? And I know why, because it's like you're not going to piss off a giant army of like really, really just gigantic dudes in armor who work for you and are willing to fight stuff for you. But like some of these guys, I'm like, we probably should have reined this in, if you'll pardon the horse pun.
Yeah, I mean the problem is once you have a monopoly on force in a society, you have a monopoly on force in a society. So depending on where you are, what else is going on politically, your ability to lead a band of heavily armed guys places you, it's a force multiplier, right? Essentially.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, but that's a good. I think that brings us to a good segue. Does anyone want to start? Oh, is Franco back?
He'll be back in a second. I think.
Oh, that sounds better.
That sounds way better.
Yeah.
What happened? What sorcery is this?
Oh, that's all right. You came in much like our nightly orders, man. Like swept in right at the last second. I'm like, the line's breaking. Franco arrives. Yes, we're saved. We did it. We were just about to transition to talking about like the crazy nightly orders, the ones that we liked the most, the ones we picked for this.
Okay, so I was listening to 50% of the conversation. I got that you were talking about what is a knight, not a nightly order, right? What makes a knight?
Yeah, start with the raw material.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And we did that, and then we were about to transition to nightly orders. So,
okay, so how about we start by explaining what a nightly order is?
Well, now that Franco's back, I feel like
I
just explain what the order is. But
you're good.
Well, as far as I could tell, like the first actual nightly orders are very practical, right? They're there largely to take care of the pilgrims basically going to Palestine, right? That's the primary thing, and those actually predate the First Crusade. the very early ones at least. And then, of course, once the crusade happens and Jerusalem is taken, then they become really institutionalized.
From what we were talking last time, I mean, we mentioned that the Hospitallers were like the McDonald's of the Middle Ages. But the idea of an order is, at this period, is most like forming a corporation to get something done, or forming a company to get something done at this point.
Yeah. And I think your use of the term corporation is really important, because what you're really eventually talking about is a multinational corporation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you report directly to the Pope, you are pretty much, by definition, a transnational organization.
I can restrict it. On the topic of corporations, I had to restrict my picks because we talked so much about the Hospitallers last time. They would have been my number one pick on this list, but we've already talked about them there. But the idea of a business makes sense too, because what you'll find, at least what I have found historically, about knightlies or just knights in general, is a lot of times like that's a highly specialized skill set, and building an organization around a knight actually makes them more successful. Like, I think the average person forgets how much additional assistance a knight needs to be successful on the battlefield.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Whether it's people to manage their horses, people to repair their armor, or whether it's squires and pages to help them get ready, or it's like the idea of a retinue isn't just like you and your 3 of your homies. It's like you and the 40 plus people needed to like in a lot of ways. It feels a lot like, and again, I know, Karl, I'm going to put you right into the weeds here. I'm going to use a modern sports analogy. It feels a lot like how professional basketball stars are treated, where like you have a basketball star like a Michael Jordan or like an Anthony Edwards or like a LeBron James, and they've got a publicist and a nutritionist and somebody that works with them on their weight training, and somebody that helps them with yoga on their days off, and then somebody that they see for their like mental health, and then like there's a whole support staff so that one person can be as effective as possible. And having an organization, a corporation built around that, just makes the whole thing run smoother. And I think that's something people who maybe like think of knights as an isolated person should probably think about first going into the discussion. Like, there's a reason that knightly orders exist to make knights more effective, and there's a lot that goes into it.
That is there's a whole support structure.
I would actually say they have the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yes, infrastructure. The infrastructure is the perfect name for it.
Yeah, the knightly orders had an organized infrastructure and a rule book and everything, which the knights of kingdoms, like you were mentioning before when I was missing most of it, it was a bit more here and there, and family-based, for example, and etc. etc. So in the knightly orders, you throw like A to Z, like you said, there's a whole infrastructure, training, and the way they live, and they have to do everything.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about just knights, if you're talking about just knights, I don't want to say you're left to your own resources, but to Kyle's point, your resources include that retinue, that supporting retinue, which again just emphasizes you can't be poor and be a knight. You can't even be, there is no middle class, so forget that. But you know what I mean? You have to be wealthy because you have to pull on a variety and a large number of resources. But when that becomes institutionalized in an order, suddenly some of that burden is lifted from you, because it's more efficient, because now you can just get on with the fighting.
Which again makes the basketball comparison that much more apt, because they don't want to have to worry about it. I'm just here to play basketball. I'm just here to kill people, guys. Like, that's my job.
Yeah. My basic skill set is to put the ball in the hoop.
Yep.
Everything else is secondary.
Put the lance in the person.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a really good. So if you guys are cool and we can jump to the actual orders themselves, I think that's a really good segue to the one that I wanted to talk about first. Because we're talking about these resources and like they're important to a knightly order. And I still think the Teutonic Knights are probably a good place for us to start. Because for those of you guys who don't know, the Teutonic Knights is a Germanic order of knights, but they're really, how do I put this gently? They act more like a swarm of locusts than they do an actual knightly force. Like most knightly orders, they're founded to protect pilgrims, to protect religious figures and religious institutions. But this like need for resources is part of the reason the knights do the thing that they are most known for, which is attempting to conquer Lithuania, and then like parts of what would become Russia. I don't know if it's Novgorod at that point. I'm not entirely positive. Or Kiev and Rus, I guess. The kingdoms of the Kiev and Rus are probably what that would be. But yeah, like, and they do it largely because they can't sustain that level of resource drain for that long. And, you know, shockingly enough, protecting poor pilgrims does not often pay the bills. So yeah, they just decide, you know, instead of set up a great financial institution, which is what the Templars do, and manage to indebt all of the country of France, which is like basically, you know, how the Templars made their bag, or the hospitals who set up shop at the most lucrative religious sites in the world. Yeah, it's exactly how they do it, right? Or like the Hospitallers, who I like, again, as much as I love them, what a smart business move. They're the ones that are protecting the single most lucrative sites of pilgrimage for Christian missionaries in the world, right? They're the ones that maintain all the pilgrimage sites in the Levant. So there's tons of money coming in and out of that region. The Teutonic Order doesn't have that. So they're just like, let's just take a country and a half.
Well, so I think there is a common. It's not really a common denominator, but it's close. Which is that obviously for the Hospitallers, for the Templars, we largely talk about them sort of as a religious military order, right? But it's a different situation than in the Baltic, because you've got established sites largely throughout the Mediterranean world. You don't have that in the Baltic. But what you do have is, you know, the Drang nach Osten, the drive to the east. And lots of times, as has been going on since the 8th century, Christian missionaries are the first people to go out. Okay? So then they're out there on their own. They're getting massacred. They're being martyred, you know, left and right. And the Pope decides, you know, I want to create a bishopric of, you know, Riga. Okay. I know there's only two Christians in the whole area, but that's what we're going to do. But what that kind of does is that, because this is very similar to the way the British Empire did it lately, because you now have an interest, you've created an interest in an area. Now you have to defend that interest. And that's what the Teutonic Knights end up doing. It's like, oh no, Christians, now they're in trouble there. Well, okay, we need to go and save them.
But exactly. It's copy-paste of the crusade.
Yeah, I mean, it is a crusade.
It's a copy-paste situation of the crusade. It's a other area.
And also too,
yeah,
I talked about this when
what
we
you
were
were saying about the
forever ago. But there's a lot of like times where if you're a Christian power, you will use violence towards Christians as pretext to establish economic dominance in a region, and that's essentially what they're doing. Except that the Teutonic Knights are like, hey.
Yes.
What if instead of your dominance, it's our economic dominance? And that's kind of what gets them in trouble, is like, if they had played ball with the church for longer, they might have lasted longer. But yeah, like obviously they wind up stretching themselves too thin and then getting forced out, and then the order gets abolished, and at that point, they're cooked. But like for a brief shining moment, like 5-10 years, this was like the scourge of the earth, basically. And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to start with them, is they feel kind of supervillainy, at least to me. They feel like supervillains, right? Like if you've ever, like those of you who are watching and listening, like Google a picture of the Teutonic Order. If you thought, like they didn't even try. They're like the Sith of knightly orders. They have big, giant, like dragon wings on the sides of their helmet.
Where is the Hospitaller
like
part?
Black and white. Like at one point, they had like
Hospitaller
they set up just giant effigies that they would bring into battle.
Saint Mary.
They're insane. Like they sacked like
what's the official name of the Teutonic Order?
Poland once, just because. Like it's nuts. And they're just like, yeah, but there was loot and food there, and none of you could fight good.
Oh, I'm losing you guys again.
Which is like such a Viking mindset, but they just showed up and they're like, ha, we don't care. Oh, you're Christian, that's neat.
No, I
think melted down and put on my helmet. Like it's insane. It's insane.
Well, I think something else that kind of runs alongside a lot of this, and this is true both in the Mediterranean and in the Baltic, is that once these kind of orders got going, the reason they became self-perpetuating, or at least they wanted to be self-perpetuating, right?
Yeah.
So the answer is you got to go harder, you got to go farther. And so they actually ended up to some degree being, I'm not even sure that they ended up taking on a social uh, a social reason for being, in that as an example, uh, in the waning years of the Teutonic Knights, um, they were, because nothing at that point, or not a lot, was going on in the Mediterranean. This was where young European nobles went for like the summer. So for example,
That's insane.
when Henry IV was, before he came back and took over England, what did he do? Well, he did the social circuit. It was like going to Monaco during the Grand Prix, right? And so he fought in tournaments all across Europe. And then he was like, hey, I've heard there's a chance of some action up there. That would be great. So he heads off and joins the Teutonic Order, or at least affiliates himself with them for, a campaign season. And he takes along his retinue of like 150 guys, all of whom were just there to make him look good, pretty much. And he fights with the order, and now he gets to call himself a crusader, and he enjoyed the fighting, so he gets that as well. So, and then he comes back and conquers England. So he's it's sort of like, if you're familiar with the idea of the Grand Tour later on, where, young English aristocrats would visit France and they'd visit Italy and all of that. These things almost become like stops on this, like, coming of age gap year type thing.
I just want to point out, it's really funny that there's an idea that somebody's like, oh yeah, my unpaid internship was sacking Poland. Like that's insane. That's what I'm saying though. And like, I picked, because I assume we each do like one or two orders. But the reason I picked this one, and the reason I thought maybe Karl, your audience would think this would be really interesting, is twofold. It's one, it's the idea that like the knightly orders aren't always good, and in fact are like sometimes like some of them are neutral, or like I would assume that this is my bias. I think the Hospitallers are like mostly neutral to good, like in general, of terms of like their social impact and their mission. Like the Templars, I think, get done a much worse rap than possible because it was politically advantageous to like get rid of them and eliminate them. The Teutonic Knights are just like, we're just gonna sack anybody. And I think that's kind of a cool thing though. Like if people are looking to like make that a part of the terrains they build, the games they play, the history they want to research, like they really are just like, we are supervillains, and that we're okay with it. And like that to me is one of the most interesting things about them, because like you don't get orders that seem to be that unapologetically there for the plunder in the same way that the Teutonic Knights are. And like, yeah, there's pretext. Yes, there's like cultural, religious stuff that they like to use to make sure that happens. Exactly what Tom's saying. Like there's so much reason to go there if you're a noble. Like there's that social pretext that they take advantage of too. But like by the end, I don't think they had any allies, because they were just like, you can only play the villain for so long before that kind of catches up with you. But like if you're watching this or listening to this, I really would encourage all of you, go look up some of the Teutonic Knight armor, go look up art of the Teutonic Knights. They really just, they just leaned. It's the equivalent of Darth Vader sitting on the TIE fighter. And you guys, I don't know if anyone's ever read any of the Star Wars stuff, but Darth Vader's cape always billows, and there's no air in space, which means that Darth Vader is using the Force to make his cape billow just for the aura. And that's basically the Teutonic Knights as an organization.
I think if you want a visual of the Teutonic Knights, you should watch a Russian film from 1938 called Alexander Nevsky, because it's exactly that. I mean, you could be playing the Darth Vader theme whenever the Teutonic Knights appear on screen. And there is literally, so they're standing there and they are still wearing like their white surcoats and everything. And they've got the big casque helmets on. And some of them, they don't have wings, but they have what looks like snakes kind of going like this. And there are literally scenes where there's a priest standing there next to him, and he does the sign of the cross, not on the actual whoever it is that's in the Teutonic Knights, and the Teutonic Knight holds up a naked baby and drops him into the fire. So I mean, it's like, Anakin Skywalker, you got nothing on us, man. You're just cutting them up. We're actually burning babies.
Yeah,
That's a hell of a visual.
They are.
No,
insane,
it's a great film. I mean, it's, is it history? Well, no, probably not really. But if you want to see the effect, the sort of the memory of what these guys were like, it's a great film to watch. I mean, of course, in the end, the wonderful Russians win, but all of the stuff is there. The dehumanized look, we do this. We say we're doing this for God, but we're actually just dropping the kid.
Yeah. And I will say one more thing too, just in case anyone's looking for like some more aesthetic options. If anyone's a big board game fan and has either played or heard of the board game Scythe, which is a really famous board game. I don't know if anyone's played it or heard of it. Maybe someone in the audience has. The artist of Scythe, who drew all of those World War I mechs, is a Polish artist, Jakub Rozlowski. He did a whole thing, basically, literally turning the Teutonic Order into monsters, and he did a whole thing of like basically like fantasized their campaign into Poland.
Okay.
And that is a pretty interesting. So the Teutonic Knights are alive and well in a lot of cultures' mythology and like a lot of cultures' like memory as like these kind of villains, which makes them, again, I think really compelling and interesting to talk about as like an antagonistic force.
I mean, an invasion of that scale would always leave a cultural footprint.
Oh, right. And oh boy, that footprint was footprinting.
Yep.
They were not thrilled. Which again, I don't blame them. It's insane. But yeah. Anyway, that's my first order. The Teutonic Knights.
If I may, can I add some stuff?
Especially.
Please.
You're hearing me, right? Excellent.
Yeah, it's a bit choppy sometimes, but we're getting you.
All right, so I'll try. So what is the Teutonic Knights? Few orders apart from the Spanish border, where there's one nation, one group of from one geographic area. Like the Templars and Templars were multinational, the Teutonics were Germanic, I guess. So that's an interesting cultural part. And what's really interesting to me is after those 1290, disaster in the Holy Land, as the siege of Acre, they sort of decide to go into this real estate business up north, which the hospitals do the same in Rhodes. The Templars didn't, and then they may end. So I think they sort of did the same formula as the hospitals did. They moved on and they literally continued their holy war up against the pagans up north. So yeah.
I mean,
that's my that's what in. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they all began.
Can you? Go on.
I think the fact that they all sort of began in roughly the same place and then were forced by events to figure out alternate ways to operate.
Yeah.
Not one of them said, "Nah, we're just going to pack it in. It's all over." They all tried to perpetuate themselves in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Too much to lose. It became such an important system that
Yeah. And by the way, I mean, if you, we can probably get off the Teutonic Knights after this, but one of the things that I love about the Teutonic Knights, and back to your point, Kyle, about they're going in under pseudo-religious pretexts, but eventually they kind of fall out with the church because they're competing sources of legitimacy. The end, I won't say the end because technically it still exists, but the end of the Teutonic Knights as a territorial
Yes, a
entity.
sovereign state, I would say.
Yeah. The end of that comes about, I think, in about 1525, when the Grand Master of the order says, screw this, I don't like all of this. I'm going to decide that we're going to be Protestants from now on. And so Albrecht of Brandenburg just kind of says, hey, how can I maintain control over this territory? And the only answer really is, I have to split with the Catholic Church. I have to become a Lutheran. And by the way, this is the origin of Prussia. And so you can now trace the Teutonic Knights and all the things we've talked about in terms of, that story continues, right? Because pretty much what we're saying is that, the idea of Prussian militarism is prefigured in the Teutonic Knights.
Okay, I'm just going to have to leave my desk for a second. Please go on. I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Wait, are we pausing?
Okay.
No, just go ahead.
Okay, I was just saying. So one of the things that I was looking at. All right. One of the things I was looking at was like a lot of these German knightly orders, not just the Teutonic Knights, wind up playing parts in the Schmalkaldic Wars later on. So it's which is very interesting when you think about like Germany and Austria and like what their national character goes on to become culturally. That it's not just the Teutonic Knights, like it's all these different minor orders, but the Teutonic Knights too. That like there's a sort of like weird warrior culture mythos that gets like kind of jumbled in with German cultural identity and like throughout like early modern history, especially pre-World War One. It's interesting that its foundation is there. So
yeah.
Tom,
I
Franco,
think I was just going to say, I think again, the idea of how do you perpetuate yourself? Because the order owns things. The order provides a home for some people. It is that support mechanism. So you might think, like with reference to the Schmalkaldic Wars, you're talking about 400 years after not just the founding of the Teutonic Knights, for example, but they've already relocated to to the Baltic. There's been this huge shakeup when Albrecht of Brandenburg essentially tries to change them to Protestants, and there is a group that breaks off and says, no, we're still Catholic, we're the real ones. But what do you do if otherwise you're going to be left adrift? You have no place in society if the order just dissolves and you've been a knight working for them for however many years.
And the same period, in this period, the Teutonic Order. Hello. In this period, the Teutonic Order was a sovereign state threatened by these other new sovereign states. Not new, but Prussia, Austria. So yeah, like you said, it lost its struggle. It had to sort of disintegrate into these sort of branches they were integrated into the state, so to speak. Could you say some of them became chivalric orders of those states? Like in the Austrian part? Did they remain a religious military order?
Yeah. I think part of it is like, again, the Teutonic Knights, they absorbed like the Brothers of the Sword and the Livonian Order and stuff like that. And that's fine. But eventually when it all kind of starts to reverse, and for a variety of reasons, whether it's the actual engineered downfall of the Templars, and can't remember the name of the King of Portugal, but who convinces the Pope that whatever belonged to the Templars in Portugal should now belong to an order that is a national order.
Yes.
You're seeing a devolution now. The crusading impulse is pretty much dying. It's sort of everything is now reversing itself.
The perfect Johnson are we'll probably talk about them later, but the Spanish orders are perfect because the Reconquista, they were religious military orders, and then when it was all done and dusted, then they just kept existing, but they were integrated into the kingdoms. Okay, now we're not religious military orders anymore. We're sort of religious military orders, but we're chivalric orders tied to a nation. So
I think Spain is really.
I think with the Spanish orders, it was. Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. But they weren't like bad, as they weren't looked up as the bad guys as much as the Teutonics. Probably, less looting footprint, probably.
Right. Right.
So,
but I would say that and again, we don't necessarily want to go down this rabbit hole right now. But the Spanish or the whole Spanish situation is different because literally they keep going with the Crusades longer.
But
Yes.
at the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, the Spanish orders were not monastic, no?
No. They
So-
really were knightly orders. There wasn't,
I think that's one point that would make them different from the Teutonic orders, because, I mean, if you own the land, ideally you don't want, or you're planning to own that land, you ideally don't want to, set fire to the peasants.
destroy it. Yeah. That's what I said. The Spanish situation is really kind of a special one.
Mhm.
It follows a different trajectory.
that's-
But again, they are
linked with
national.
stuff.
They're not pledging. It's sort of like the Inquisition, right? The Spanish Inquisition does not report to the Pope.
Yeah.
The Spanish military orders do not report to the Pope,
Good
unlike
point.
ultimately, supposedly, the Templars and the Hospitallers.
Okay,
Can I raise an interesting point that
Sure.
came up when I was like thinking about this video, and the what you're saying about the Spanish orders just kind of reconfirms the point that I was wondering about. In a lot of ways, and I'm gonna make this argument, and maybe this is a hot take. I think samurais are knights.
I
I'm gonna
would say
say
so,
that.
yeah.
Sorry.
I think those are, because like especially when we're talking, because I hadn't even considered it, but like thinking about what you guys are saying about the Spanish orders, and I'm dumb for not putting it together. The Spanish orders are basically like European samurai in a lot of ways, right? Like they own and manage a ton of land. They don't report to a central religious figure, and when the fighting is done, they are reintegrated into society, and take up prominent roles in commerce, business, and industry, which is exactly what happened to the samurai orders after the fall of the Meiji Restoration.
I think one potential difference is that the samurai, even before the Meiji Restoration, had already largely, as a class, become impoverished.
I guess that's true. Yeah, and the Reconquista Knights, that never happens. But
No,
is
they
wealth,
just kept going.
wealth a characteristic of being a knight, though? That's the one thing we never established. Because, like, I mean, you do need some amount of wealth to be a knight. Obviously, we talked about the retinues, the organizations, everything. But, like, am I a knight even after I lose my wealth? Is it like?
Well,
is
that's
this-
pretty much a hedge
is
knight,
I
isn't
lose
it?
I lose the black card and I lose the country club membership, and I'm not whatever. You know what I mean? Like, how does that? Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get us too far into the weeds again.
I
'Cause I
don't
like talking
think
about
it makes a
knights.
difference, to be honest.
Depends if you belong to an IT order.
I was
Yeah,
having
if
that
you
thought. I was
belong
like,
to
"Dang,
those
that's-
European
those
knights, you can
those
remain
parallels
for.
are those parallels are paralleling.
Yes.
Sorry, Franco, could you
I
repeat
mean,
that?
I think he froze. Oh no, there we go. I mean, I tend to look at it as a
Yep.
knight.
Still here.
If you really wanted to find a knight, it has to be a European knight. I mean, you can find similarities because people provide the same services, the same functions all over the world.
Oh, yes.
Almost every civilization has certain
Yes,
needs
exactly.
and people
Right.
fulfilling those needs. So
Right.
I think if you're going to say a knight, I think it is a European thing. I think it's absolutely necessary to note the similarities because there are always going to be similarities. But I think a knight specifically is a European phenomenon. And
Yes.
and the question of what makes a knight, I mean, we've sort of defined it by structure, we've defined it by wealth, we haven't really dug into it, but in terms of social status, those are all things that come into play, and they're different, by the way, in different countries in Europe. But there's nobody who's a knight who doesn't want to be a knight. Nobody's forced into becoming a knight. And I think that by itself is kind of a specific issue, because thanks to the great chain of being, the idea is, hey, it's 1200, you're a peasant, you're not going to become anything other than a peasant,
Right.
you know. So the idea of stability, the idea of status, I think that's really important, because a knight is one of, as I said before, is one of the few things that will take you outside long before, you know, mercantile pursuits did it. Being a knight, being a great fighter, is one of those things that, given the right circumstances, can take you out of the position that you were born in, and you can start to climb the ladder at least a little bit. And by the time, even though we're absolutely correct in saying, well, you got to have a retinue, you got to have war horses and all of this. To go back to 1066, a lot of those guys, again, were like, fourth sons of an impoverished Breton family. They didn't really have that much. What they did have was their right arms. And one of the reasons they were at Hastings was to get all that stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay, Lisa's saying, I was
Even
just
if
about
you
to say
were
that you can
not
draw layers,
of
but yeah,
blood, I was going to say, if you're not of enough level of the class to become of the knight status, you still be a sergeant at arms in any order anyway. For example, because there is a bit of a link socially with the knight. You can't be a peasant and become a knight, really. You have to come from at least an impoverished family, which like is a landowner or the upper society. Like,
okay. So I think that's in the content.
there's
Wow, didn't catch any of that.
Okay, so what Franco was that's okay. So what Franco was talking about is that to join the hospitallers, for example, you couldn't be a peasant and join. You had to, I believe it was like 4/4 of nobility or something like that. You could be an impoverished noble and join. Franco spoke me or whatever if I'm wrong or get off the point. But
Well, and
not,
again,
not just the hospitals, most of them like the order.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's true. I'm not saying that you can immediately jump to that, but what I am saying is that there's I don't know, if you look at certainly some of the people, I don't know, like Geoffrey de Charny comes to mind. He came from an impoverished family. This was a guy who I mean, it was technically what you would think of as a knightly family, but it had almost no resources whatsoever. And it was basically, he had to win the resources to have the resources. So I think, to a certain degree, we end up sort of confusing the issue by talking about knights in society versus knightly orders. I mean, obviously there's a lot of interpenetration.
They're different. Yeah.
But they are different. And the Hospitallers or the Templars, even the Teutonic Knights, these are prestigious organizations, right? So they don't go down to, your local do-it-yourself warehouse store and just grab a guy who's waiting outside to do day labor. They want people who can fight. I suppose if you showed up, in Königsberg in 1260 and said, "Hi, I want to be a servant," they probably wouldn't turn you away, but you're going to be a servant, right? So I think there is a disjunction between the two, and once you're in the Hospitallers or the Templars, the Teutonic Knights, and you are a knight within the order. I think you've made it. I don't think you have to worry about things. I mean, other than dying of disease or whatever. You know, I think you've made the status. And I think that's another reason why, as I said, like with the example of Henry IV, it's why it was cool to go and do this for a season. You know, it was a status thing. It was, if you were a Boy Scout, it was another badge you could put on your sash. It was another notch on your gun. The order sort of transformed it by saying, look, all knights fight. That is their purpose. But we fight for a specific reason. And that reason is not to fight.
Yeah. Gives it more legitimacy because all the orders need to have a reason to exist.
Exactly. And they have a patron, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's true whether it's a national order or a transnational order, whether it's the Pope or the King of Aragon or, you know, whoever. You can always go, look, what I am doing is sanctioned. You know? And using the word sanctioned, by the way, also points out about how, again, the religious origins of this purpose, right?
Okay,
you know, obviously, if you know Latin at all, you know where the word sanction comes from. So,
we do have a question from Aiden's apprentice. That mention of servants gets me thinking. I know Templars at least had a huge proportion of people who were not knights and instead managed properties. Was that true for the other knightly orders?
Well, certainly true for the Hospitallers, right? So
yeah, Hospitallers for sure. I'm not sure the Teutonics actually. I'm not sure about.
I'm not sure either. I think the
Hospitallers
key
and
is
Templars for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing to remember is that while there were many, many non-knights in things like the Templars and the Hospitallers, they did typically, and Franco can check me on this, they did frequently, if someone was a knight and they were rendered unable to fight, either by age or injury or whatever, you would rotate them back to a Templar or Hospitaller property back in Europe, a commandery. You were still a knight. You'd put in the time and you would run that particular property, right?
Of course.
So
that was the ultimate retirement plan.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
The commandery was the retirement plan. I mean, you earn a commandery after having served, I don't know how many cycles of service in the order. The higher you get, the more you earn, the bigger the commandery.
Yeah.
And same with the Templars, basically.
And it makes sense. I mean, and again, we're back to the whole corporate structure.
Exactly,
idea.
Part of the system. You need broken, retired, old knights because you've got like hundreds of properties all over Europe which need to be managed by someone who can actually read and has loyalty to the order in both the Teutonics and the Hospitallers. Again, not sure.
Like to oh, sorry. Go ahead, Franco. No, finish your thought.
Go for it.
No, I was just going to say, on the topic of old and broken knights, that's another thing that came up a lot during the knightly order research I was doing for the video. And actually, Karl knows this because Karl watched the video I did on fighting evil on a budget on Medieval Moneyball, which is like, how am I going to beat the Dark Lord with like 2 coppers in my pocket? But like old and broken down knights wind up becoming the core of your next knightly brigade because those are the ones that train the next order of knights. Mm-hmm. Like I think another thing, like taking into account for those of you who like watching who are maybe more casual fans of history and like military training in general, is like unless you have a master at arms, or you are from a wealthy family and can get the tutoring that you need from people who are really good at it, you're not going to be very good at combat. But knightly orders have the advantage of basically being full of, as Franco described them, old and broken down knights who aren't much good on an actual battlefield, but are great teachers. Which is part of the reason they're able to like bring tons of new people to the front. So it's not just that they manage these properties, but like that's your core knowledge base. That's essential.
It's your institutional memory.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Old broken down knights are the ones that are going to make the next generation of knights better. And that's exactly what you see, is the ones that have a good core of broken down knights make the next order of knights better. like consistently across
100%.
like everything that I've
Yeah.
looked at. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to chime in there because I think that's a great point that you're saying, Franco, and I wanted to make sure that didn't people were
Yes,
like,
yes,
oh
yes.
yeah, like, the elderly are a resource in the Middle Ages in ways that, like, I,
Yeah, for
it's not
sure.
awful.
And by elderly, you mean 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now some of them live to a crisp 52.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think to bear in mind is that, again, because these orders, at least the major ones, are relatively closely linked to the church, they can sometimes draw on the church for resources. So that, for instance, one of the things you have to do in the commandery, I mean, the purpose of the commandery is to basically send money
Yeah.
to the
It's a
frontline
revenue.
institutions. Yeah,
It's
that's
a
what they're
revenue,
there
yeah.
for. So if all you're good for is fighting, that isn't going to make you a good manager of a commandery. But sometimes you have the ability, because of the links, because of the connections through the church, to call upon somebody literate, somebody who actually knows what they're doing at a nearby monastery. Or, you could actually, and I know this happened in the Teutonic Knights, you can't admit somebody in holy orders. Okay, not because technically they're in holy orders too, but sort of normal holy orders, you can't admit them to the order as a full member. But there are lots of people. This is the retinue. The retinue applies not just to the individual knight. The retinue also applies to the entire order of knights, so that you need not just knights, but you also need accountants, because it's that big. And where do you get your
Oh
accountants?
yeah, of course. If you have a civil service.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you go and get a literate monk and go, hey, do you want to be? I can't remember the name of the specific position, but monasteries are very similar, right?
The
And these are,
receiver.
yeah. So you go and say, hey,
It's
Abbot
called the
so and so,
receiver.
yeah, do you have somebody who can handle accounts? I'm looking for somebody. And he says, yes, brother so and so. And the next thing you know, this guy is now taking care of the accounts for the commandery. And the grizzled old veteran of 37 who is training youngsters, is like, wow, he's great. And it all looks good for me too, and more money is being poured into the efforts of the order, somewhere in the East.
Okay, I would also note that
Or not.
what we're saying mostly, or not, what we're saying mostly applies to, what we're saying applies to religious orders or monastic orders, because if they're like something like the Order of the Garter or the Order of whatever, that are lay noblemen, then they have their own properties, they have their own support stuff. The order as such does not manage their properties, they manage their own
Yeah,
properties.
that's
Yeah.
yes. Those are the secular orders then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I always feel like the creation of the secular orders is a largely nostalgic movement. Like, oh, remember the good old days, and
Yes.
everybody used to get together.
Yeah.
And there's this weird, like, in England,
I mean,
it's
what is the enemy of secular orders?
I think that would be one of the Order of the Garter, I think maybe.
Sorry,
or something
Tom.
like that.
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah, no, I mean, there's one before the Order of the Garter, and I think it's in Spain, but which again is a separate case. So I'm not sure how much we need to dwell on that. But the whole thing with Edward III, who sort of leads the chivalric orders of England and founds the Garter, is this is the same guy who liked to hold banquets at which he pretended he was King Arthur. And if you go to Winchester Cathedral, you can see a replica supposedly of the round table that he had made at which to hold these banquets. There is this sort of nostalgic, oh, remember the golden age. And of course, this is exactly when the crusading impulse is beginning to die.
Now, I do have a theory about that.
Exactly. Yes.
I don't think it's just nostalgia. First of all, Arian's Apprentice, I hope that we answered your question. But with regards to secular orders, my thinking is that it's kind of like a badge that you could give your nobles without actually giving them anything of real value. Now, let's put it this way. Let's say that I don't know. Let's say that Tom is one of my parents. He did something good, but I don't want to give him more land because he has too much land already, and he's going to be richer than me. Then I don't like that.
It's an honorific.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an honorific.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that
It's also a double thing because you're getting more loyalty from the person who's given the honorific. So it's an investment as well.
I mean, prestige and prestige and status are currencies as well, but he can't actually pay for an army to invade Mudat.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think there's one more thing, which is not. I mean, these guys weren't stupid, so most of them actually probably thought about that. Franco's right. This is about loyalty, but the knock-on effect, the next thing from loyalty is that it's probably not a coincidence that this is exactly when national monarchies are starting to coalesce in Western Europe.
Yes.
Okay. So you bind the people to you more closely. You give them lots of shiny bits of metal. You say, hey, let's have a big dinner once a year, whatever. But you're also, because it's a national order, you're also starting to tie the country together. And I mean, all of these things are true, right? None of them are mutually exclusive. And it's probably, I think it's probably really more important than it's generally thought, that these orders are usually limited in terms of the number of people who can belong to them. So that initially it's not just, look, I'm giving you something nice and you'll give me more of your loyalty in return. It's also, you're special. And there aren't many people that I'm giving this to. Again, it's still personal, which is very medieval. But the knock-on effect is to create a group, right?
I think that makes sense, because if you take, for example, the Kingdom of France has a lot more knights than the Kingdom of Aquitaine or the Kingdom of, help me here, other part of France or whatever. Once you jump them together, then you have to get those knights to a network somehow. Yeah.
Although it is interesting, by the way, that you can actually be members of different countries and have received many of these orders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this gets ridiculous. By the time you get to the 20th century, there are people with orders from 40 countries. But even during this period, it can be. Look, it's not a coincidence that the first of the avowedly chivalric orders, the Order of the Golden Fleece, is founded by the Duke of Burgundy. Okay, the Duke of Burgundy's aspirations to become a king, the fact that he rules this tremendously disparate array of principalities and counties and cities and stuff like that, his primary goal is to try to merge them all together. It's a very difficult thing, and he is going to get as much. He's going to have as many people owe him as he can. He wants people to owe him inside his own domains. He wants to give this to the Holy Roman Emperor because maybe the Holy Roman Emperor can make him a king. He wants to do all of this. So it's kind of a situation where it's a shiny thing to hang out and, hey, aren't we all having fun? And you should support me. I'm your best friend.
At the same time, that kind of increases the value of the thing because, being able to say that you're a member of the same club as the Holy Roman Emperor is kind of...
Exactly. It's a private club. That's what it is. And the fact that you're one of 33 members of the Order of the Garter, and if, by the way, if you look at some of the members of the Order of the Garter, you're like, these people don't belong in this club.
Also,
when Edward III created it in whatever it was, 1337 or whatever, some of the people that he put in the Order of the Garter weren't even knights. He knighted them right before the first meeting of the Order of the Garter.
Still counts.
So, those people are like, oh, I owe you everything. They're his for life.
That is, I mean, like, that would be some definitely a way to buy loyalty for sure.
Yeah, and
It's a skip
you can do it to everybody.
places part.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like
yeah.
those folks, and I can't remember any of their names, but I mean, they went from I don't want to say nobodies, because obviously he's not, again, doing this to peasants, but they suddenly went to, I have a personal relationship with the king. Oh, and also these other major nobles, right? I'm sitting next to the Earl of Salisbury at dinner. He has terrible table manners, but he's the Earl of Salisbury.
I would also like to point out too, because we're talking about loyalty, that a lot of times those kinds of positions. So we've talked about like knights as villains, like in the Teutonic Order, but a lot of times like a knightly order is a good way to control the people around you, or to at least inspire a certain amount of cooperation from them, right? Like, yeah, like I'll knight these two guys right before the ceremony, and now they're knights officially, but also like if I'm the king, or whether like a high-ranking noble or somebody who like has to operate at the highest level, and I need to know that some people have my back, and I'm pretty sure that these people are good candidates for it, or I'm fairly certain that they are mercenary enough that lands and titles will buy their loyalty for the length of time that I need it. Making a knightly order and giving it to them is a great way to do that, and that happens like a shit ton in history. Like I'll make a position, I'll elevate somebody to like a position, knowing full the English monarchs it was. God, it was like during War of the Roses. It's during the War of the Roses. I don't know what. You know what? Forget it. I'll figure it out later. But like he appoints one of his guys as a knight, and someone's like, "Why did you do this?" And he goes, "Because he kills when I ask him to, and I don't have to worry about him killing me." Is essentially what it is.
Okay,
And they're like,
what
"You've
more
knighted
could
an
you ask for?
attack dog," and he's like, "Yes, I've knighted an attack dog." That's not. This is not a bug; it's a feature.
It's essentially why you need a knight as a ruler.
Yeah.
That's
that's
the only reason. Loyalty.
Yeah.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
That's right.
and the ability to kill.
Yeah.
I mean, but he has now stripped it down to the primary quality of a knight is somebody who will kill somebody, and do it well. One hopes.
Sorry, two qualities. Kill those guys, but not kill you. That's important.
Yes. Well,
that direction.
There is a flip side to this, and somebody touched on it earlier about if you don't want to give somebody land and titles, you give them the shiny thing, right? It doesn't actually, it confers some status, but it doesn't confer power.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this happens over and over again in history, where the king has a favorite, gives him lands and title, and there's immediately a baronial revolt. And it could be because the barons are like, this guy's an idiot. He's nobody. Why are you giving it to him? This is just poor administration. Or it could be, why'd you give it to him and not to me? Or it could be, why did you give it to him, not to me? And this is a pattern, because that kind of tends to play into it. But at the same time, I don't think anybody gets upset about, oh, why did you name that guy as a knight commander of the Order of the Garter, unless some of this other stuff has been happening. But
yes.
Yeah, it's the last straw. It's like, geez, well, I guess we know how this is going to go.
I also want to point out that how much I hate that all of this feels like corporate America. The more we talk about,
it's very similar. It's also like the Rotary Club or the Masons.
Here's your bullshit title. You're the assistant to the director manager, and
well,
you don't get the pay raise or any extra benefits. You just get the title.
It's just and the responsibility.
Right after your unpaid internship sacking Poland, like.
Well, so being to a certain degree, what we're saying is being a knight, however defined that is sort of the basic building block. It's two things. By the time you get to the High Middle Ages, it is the building blocks of of
feudal
your structure.
Yeah, it's
right?
the feudal system. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
it.
slide them in wherever you want, and if they do really
Yeah,
well, you jump them up, and
exactly.
if not, you just discard them basically, because they're expendable. But you also have to, if you're king, you have to consciously measure what you're giving knights, and you have to think to yourself, okay, I made Piers Gaveston the Duke of Cornwall. I shouldn't have done that because he's not a member of the royal family, and the Duchy of Cornwall, being the Duke of Cornwall, is something that in the past has only gone to members of the royal family. So you have to be conscious not just of the current situation, but what was the situation in the past when you start handing out these things. But you can get around that by making him an Order of the Guard, a member of the Order of the Garter. Except it wouldn't have mattered with Piers Gaveston because everybody already hated his guts, and that's why he ended up being executed. So being a member of a knightly order is a great thing, but then when it becomes a chivalric order, it really takes on a completely different function, and people went to join knightly orders largely of their own volition. But if you're named as a member of the Order of the Garter, you don't really have a choice. The king is saying, you're my man. You are co-opted into the power structure. And that is different.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out too, like just to kind of bring it back full circle, because I feel like, we had a really long discussion at the beginning about like what is a knightly order, and we kind of struggled. It felt like we're going back and forth for a while, but orders like the Order of the Garter are a great example of why it's so difficult to define a knightly order, right? Because if anybody can be a knight, and I can make a knightly order for any reason, at any time, that's gonna kind of muddy the waters about what a knight is.
Mhm.
Especially in that period, for sure. I mean, in the earlier period, it was maybe actually a bit clearer because of the Crusades. And then after that, it becomes the political, and honor and honor and territory. You don't want to give territory; you want to give only honor, and that's what you end up with.
Right. and I suppose
it works.
Yeah, and I suppose what we're really talking about, sort of in the long chain of history, is that this is the point, in the 14th century when European society becomes much more complicated. By this time, you are seeing the rise of what you can recognize as a middle class. You're starting to see merchants actually holding power. I mean, real power. It may be limited to financial power, but by the 14th century, the kings of England are actually negotiating with the burghers of London. Before that would never have happened. It would be like, just give me the money now. You're seeing the rise of banking, the Northern Europe, the Northern Italian banking houses. It's a much more complicated situation, and the whole concept of what it means to be a knight is beginning to change. Now, it doesn't change overnight. As we know, there's knights going off in the 16th century still pretending that nothing's really changed. They're the ones that usually end up with an arquebus bullet, stuck in them somewhere. But that's, I think, where the change really begins to happen. So you can be a knight, and today you can be a knight without ever touching a weapon, right? At least the members of the Order of the Garter are required to wear swords.
Okay, so just going to throw you a question here. What's your? Do you have a favorite knightly order? I'm just going to start with Franco. Probably I know what you're going to say, but
I think we know who Kyle's is.
I picked a different one for this time. If I had to pick a second one, I have a second place, guys. I'll go last, but I have a second. I picked my second place. Listen, listen, I'm hospitaller till I die. It's just, I love my boys. But I have my second place. You guys can go first. I have my second place, though. I was ready for this. I was prepared.
Well,
I'm very boring. Obviously, the hospital order. I mean, I cannot not. I mean, come on. I got a degree from them, not from them, but from studying them.
Yeah, that's kind of a
But-
no-brainer.
But yeah,
Okay, Tom?
Mine is actually the Brothers of the Sword,
oh,
and
Oh.
nobody ever hears about them because they were a
Yeah.
failure. They got started and they were absorbed almost immediately by the Teutonic Knights.
Yeah.
There's no great battles that they would stand out from. One of the reasons I like them is just like there isn't any, we safeguard the pilgrims and we're running hospitals, or we're the vanguard of European civilization against paganism. It's like, no, we're a bunch of bros with swords.
Okay,
That's
fair enough.
what we are.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yes.
And okay, maybe their PR sucked, and maybe that's one of the reasons they didn't have the resources to succeed. But I just like the idea that there was a bunch of guys who probably drank a lot of beer, somewhere near Memel, and they decided in a fit of, drunken optimism, anybody can be a knightly order. We're going to be a knightly order. It's going to be great. We'll do it every Saturday, because Sunday is softball. And,
They were honest.
and it ended exactly as you would think it would end. Total, complete failure, absorption, guys drifting away from the group. I don't want to play that game anymore. I found a new game to play. And
Those guys have money.
yeah. Hey, wait, they've got servants. That's great. I'm going to go with them. They can carry my beer. But I just think, we always look at the big guys, right? We always look at the Hospitallers, the Templars. The Templars are sort of the Jim Morrison of the orders. It's like, have a great career, die young. Everybody thinks it's a great story. The Teutonic Knights, it's like, again, it's Darth Vader. It's
Exactly.
Prussian militarism. All of these are great. Go with the Brothers of the Sword, because you know what? You may fail, but you'll have a couple of good months of being drunk off your ass and swinging a sword around.
Okay, Lisa's saying they were a weekend biker club, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, probably.
I was just about to say,
I know what Karl's favorite is.
Oh, my second favorite?
What's Karl's
Other than
favorite?
Karl's favorite
Karl,
order. I think I know.
What is it, Karl?
Okay, shoot.
No, yours.
Saint Patrick.
You guys should count to 3 and then say it at the same time.
No, I think he mentioned it already, and I think he's correct. Would you repeat that?
Oh, they didn't hear me, so you go.
No, you go. You go.
Yeah, we didn't hear it, Karl. So who is it?
The ones with their fingers dropping
It
off.
seems that the internet does. Yep, that's the ones. Yep. The Order of St. Lazarus. Just because, like.
Sorry, what was it again?
The Order of St. Lazarus, because.
Oh, St. Lazarus.
How
yes,
and why did this happen? It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's a little bit of Call of Cthulhu sneaking in.
Yeah, okay. To be honest, the first time I ever read about them was in. The first time I read about them was in Vampire: The Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, okay, this is made up. There's no way this is real. And then I went to look it up, and well, shit. It's real. Yeah. I mean, Kyle, I know that you had mentioned them in one of your videos about knights way back, and
I did. Which is very funny because my second favorite order of knights is also the Order of Saint Lazarus. I just like, because like they're literally so. What's really interesting is they're like the Air Bud of the Crusades. Like if you think about like Air Bud, he doesn't really do anything in the movie. A couple shots, but the game-winning shot, if you ever remember watching Air Bud, is always won by a kid. It's because like that's the whole point, is like he's there to help the kid win. And that's kind of what the Order of St. Lazarus is like. They really only fight, like the evidence that I found, they really only fight in 2 major engagements. And calling them major engagements is pretty charitable. They fight in like 2 like medium skirmishes.
And if I'm not mistaken, they were wiped out both times. So
Well, yeah, because they're dying and their limbs are dropping off mid-fight. But like the sheer aura of that, like of course that's gonna be like just ingrained into your memory. Like, can you imagine fighting a zombie knight who's like chanting in Latin and quoting scripture while like that's nuts.
Wait, I don't understand how the Black Knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail can actually charge you.
I mean, at some point he can, but like when you ask people about Monty Python, they talk about the Black Knight first, and that's kind of what the Order of Saint Lazarus is.
Well, I mean, it is frightening.
Not for a more addicted thing. It's like it's so zealous, and that you know what sometimes that's pretty fun.
It's kind of horribly comedic to see a guy running towards you with his arm upraised with a sword in it, and then suddenly the arm drops off. You know. But it's also wow, how dedicated do you have to be? You're dying of this loathsome disease, right? But you're willing to put it all on the line. Of course, you have less to put on the line, I suppose, than anybody else.
At that point, I mean, like, look.
What do you have to lose?
They were dying anyway. They knew that.
I mean,
yeah. But it tells you how powerful that religious religious impulse was.
Yeah.
Also, they had the leper hospital part, which was
and a fan of the Middle Ages.
Part.
It is that aura.
Well, so someone
thing
take
that will carry you
care of these,
and that aesthetics matter so much.
Well, I mean, what they are is they're sort of specialized hospitalers. You know.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're just going to take care of the leper.
But just,
you know.
Listen, y'all. All I'm saying is aesthetics matter in life. In death, in religion, victory is temporary, drip is eternal. That's all that matters. If you've learned anything, it's that.
Yeah, I also, sort of loop back around to the corporate thing. You look at all of these corporate mergers that happen among the knightly orders. They seem to be happening over and over and over again. There's this consolidation within the knightly order industry. I mean, we don't know what the negotiations were, if there even were any, between, let's say, the Livonian order and the Teutonic Knights. But, it was like, was it a hostile takeover? Maybe. Well, they're Teutonic Knights, so it's hostile no matter what. But on the other hand, did the Livonian Knights go, man, we got to pack it in. This is not doing it for us. We're in bad strategic shape. Let's go to the Teutonic Knights, and we can offer them, areas in Samogitia and around Dorpat, and maybe they'll just take us in, and we'll be absorbed into them, but we'll still be full knights within the order, and everything will be better. Because the alternative is to get wiped out by pagans. I just wonder how many of them. I mean, again, after the Templars fell, and what's left of the Templars is disassembled, right, and sort of awarded to various people, to various kingdoms. There seems to be this idea that that things can merge, things can be taken apart, things can be awarded, because it does kind of act, like corporate history to a large degree.
Yeah. And that is a great segue. I'll talk about Knights of the Guys. This is sweet. Does that make us the Livonian Sword Order? Like, would that be us? Just like boarders hanging out? Yeah, all right.
That's right.
It beats having leprosy. I'll say that much.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. But I mean, speaking of corporate stuff, for example, I think you can even get rebrandings because, correct me if I'm wrong, Franco, I think you had mentioned that in Portugal, the Templars had just rebranded to the Knights of Christ, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was the king that Tom mentioned earlier. They just basically took the Knights of Christ. That was the new order.
Yeah.
From the Templar order, they just rebranded.
They just changed the station, basically.
Rebranded. And now they're under the King of Portugal, so now you can't touch them.
Yeah.
And again, like what you were saying about the orders of the honorific orders, their loyalty to the crown of Portugal. So win-win.
Yeah. I mean,
again,
it also means.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just gonna.
I was like I'm 3 seconds behind.
No, I was just going to say that what that does in Portugal specifically, but it happened elsewhere as well, is like the king is like, the king is saying, hey, not only is it better because now this transnational corporation over which I did not have control,
exactly,
is under my control. Yeah. Okay, not only is that
and property, and all
yes,
their property,
and now I get I in a way get the property at least, but also I have more things that I can award to people.
Yes.
Right? Yes. These are resources that you are denying to somebody, to a potential, not enemy, but you know what I mean, someone whose goals won't always march with yours, right? So you don't have to worry about that anymore. But you also have, in a sense, I mean, he didn't suppress the Templars like they were suppressed in France. So it isn't like immediately he now has 100,000 escudos or whatever. But he controls the order, so it's another resource that he can rely on, and it also because of his control of the order, he can hand out more shiny stuff.
And I might add, that's when Portuguese expansion
exactly
all over the world happened, because suddenly we have money.
Yeah. Well, and again, and resources, because even in Portugal, the idea was you've got to be able to get things to, to the Knights Hospital or the Templars or whoever. You have to have shipping that will go through the Mediterranean and take people, material, money, stuff like that. And if you're in Portugal, geographically, it makes no sense to ship any of that by land, right?
Yeah.
If you're in France, you could take it down to Genoa and put it on a ship there. But if you're in Portugal, you're not shipping it all the way across Portugal and Spain and southern France to get to a port. It makes much more sense. And now you've got maritime involvement, and that is one of the backbones of Portuguese expansion in the centuries after that.
Yeah. In fact, I had to look him up because I forgot which era he was, but this exactly the same time as the foundation of the Order of Christ, Prince Henry.
Prince Henry,
Henry of Portugal,
he was the Grand Master, wasn't he?
etc. So yeah, that obviously makes sense.
Yeah. So there's an obvious link. It's a little more obvious. Like the benefits of them getting that are a little more obvious than, let's say, the English founding the Order of the Garter or the Dukes of Burgundy founding Golden Fleece. I mean, those are almost like social clubs.
But admirable in their management plan.
They're sort of halfway.
Like you said, because of the loyalty, etc. I mean, this was easier. This was like, they're burning them down there, so let's like adopt them here, and we're an empire.
And the former Templars are happy to do it.
Exactly. I mean, okay, we won't get burned. We'll just help you build an empire. Okay,
that's fine. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were the head of a commandery in Portugal, if you're outside of Oporto in your commandery and you get news of what's happening in France, you start running around like a chicken with your head cut off, and then the king says, "Hey, look, I've cut a deal with the Pope. You're going to work for me now. Everything's fine. Just go back to your commandery. Do what you've been doing." Good deal for everybody,
except the guys who got toasted. But I mean,
or the ones that got tortured first and then it got burnt, and then it's small stuff. I would like to say one more thing, as I know, like as we're like kind of getting close to that time, that I want to talk about is like in keeping with the idea that knights are corporations. How important is a rebrand? How important is a refresh? New logo, new social media accounts, guys. Mm-hmm. We're rebranding, new target demographic, like.
Well, you have to move with the times, right?
Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, you have to move with the times, and
exactly.
as you get farther along, it's a different audience.
I just want to point out, I got so many nasty comments. One of the first videos we did was talking about knights, and I got so many nasty comments talking about how it's like, guys, this is really a corporate endeavor. And the more you research about knightly orders, and I think just knights in general, because I think so many of us grow up with these stories about knights and like
Shining
like
armor,
we
blah blah
want
blah
to
blah.
be a
Yeah.
knight.
Yeah.
I want to be still, like, you know what I mean? But like, you look at it and you're like, oh God, this really is just like a Home Depot with like more genocide. Like, it's just like, it's a lot.
Yeah. And visually too. I mean, if you go back and watch Excalibur or something like that, and people in unlikely, in armor that is clean to an unlikely degree, you're not seeing any of the fact that, like, to get that guy out there looking that good, it's cosmetologists, it's beauticians, it's tailors, it's and all of that. It takes just as much support to put that beautiful knight on a movie screen as it does to actually put a knight on a battlefield.
Yep. Yeah, the support network is huge.
Yeah, it is the production of the work of many, many people. The difference, however, is one way you only get a bad review. The other way, you're lying on the ground in mud and a peasant with a dagger slits your throat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you make the choice. And I guess the other thing to think about is, and this is, I would say, it's certainly true for knights, generally speaking, but it's also true for knightly orders, is that sometimes, especially when the idea of chivalry or the religious vocation that operates behind the knightly orders, it makes you do stupid stuff because you have to live up to the ideal. And
then you become a hero.
then and so you ride out and you're tremendous. And the bad thing is that, like, in a lot of the Crusades, or in the warfare that took place between the Crusades, you do get situations where the knightly orders ride out and they are tremendously out. Yeah, and yet they win. And you're like, oh, well, good. That can happen again. And maybe you do it again, and it happens again. But the third time, that's it. You're dead. Everybody else, if you're standing at the Horns of Hattin, you go, wait, this is not the way this was supposed to work.
Yeah, but then the order survives because it's like a Hydra. It's it's an organization. New members come in, and it keeps going. Obviously, the ones that died become the heroes, and the martyrs.
So your Hattin it's cutting off one head of the Hydra, right?
Yeah, but it's also a huge promotion.
Yes. Well, yeah, you need to send more people.
True. Yeah,
but on the other hand, if you're just a normal knight and you don't have all of that behind you,
you got lots to lose.
Yeah, in fact, that may be it for your family.
Yes, exactly.
Do it. If you think about the Wars of the Roses. Okay, so this lasts roughly off and on for 20 years, right? During that time period, every duke in England died out.
Again, all of them?
There were no more dukes.
All of them?
And they would create a new one, because somebody would be attainted of treason and then executed, and that would be it. And then maybe if they had a kid, maybe 15 years later, So it actually, in a sense, looks better than it really is. But if you're on the battlefield, and at the Battle of Towton, for example, 30,000 Englishmen die in the middle of a raging snowstorm. So you're not even dying cleanly. You're freezing to death at the same time.
That sucks.
Yeah, and you're just gone. It's
not even a battle of Horns of Hattin heroic, demise. It's like in the cold mud.
But and luckily, England survives, obviously. But at the end of the day, if you were one of the knights that followed your lord in, and it turned into a disaster, the best you can hope for is that you have a child somewhere that survives that will be allowed to inherit whatever land you have.
Yeah, you're reminding me, Tom, also about the culture of ransom in the secular Europe, like in the secular battles, sort of, so to speak. It wasn't that popular in the religious military orders. Because in the religious military orders, you go and you die, you win or you die, full stop. And you're fighting against another religion, so it's a bit of a... It still happened.
You're a little more non-human. Yeah.
There was still ransom with the Islamic kingdoms and the Christian kingdoms, but a bit less than, for example, the Wars of the Roses, because there was like huge ransom business going on there. Like, oh look, I found a knight, don't kill him.
So then the best thing that you can hope for is, okay, I survived, but my family is completely impoverished.
Yes, then obviously, but that's the business of ransom.
Right. So remember, like at the Battle of Agincourt, for all that the way that it's usually, the plucky English, I mean, because I'm an Anglophile, so, the plucky English, blah, blah, blah. And yet everybody is like, oh my God, I can't believe that Henry V ordered the prisoners to be killed. And his rationale is the French are attacking or might attack or whatever from behind. So we've got to... We can't. We have 2,000 prisoners. What are we supposed to do? Okay, and the outcry is not, "Oh my God, that's genocidal. That's
no. Yeah, exactly.
We will lose the ransoms."
Exactly. Fiscally responsible.
I mean, what is this?
These guys are just walking statues of gold,
And you want to kill them all. That's one of the aspects where the Battle of Agincourt changes the rules, sort of.
Yes. Now you can do that. You have a rationale, and still regarded as one of the greatest English kings. So I guess it didn't hurt him.
Another aspect is how the knightly orders cease to be important because of the military revolution. The singular individualistic heroics became less important. So a knight had to find a role in the system by just becoming a commanding officer, like in the Napoleonics. Then fast forward.
I mean, in Agincourt, in the 100 Years' War, you're basically, at least in Western Europe, in this sort of in-between phase where you're not calling up the feudal levy. You're actually contracting with knights to bring 40 men, of which 20 will be, bowmen and whatever. So it's already starting to become commercialized.
Yes.
Okay.
The Battle of Agincourt is one of the first ones.
Yes, exactly. So you are able now to start constructing larger and larger conglomerations of men, but it's organized. It's so-and-so's company. It isn't just, well, they owe you fealty, so they're going to show up.
Exactly.
And so the advantage that the knightly orders had of, we are an organization of people, we're an actual organization. That's really the thing. There aren't just ties, there's structure. And that's what made them effective. Whereas Western Europe, for example, in 1300, it's still a bunch of individuals and their men getting together at the same time. It's not a structure. So by the time, within 100 years after that, you're actually getting the beginnings of standing armies on a very small scale. Kyle, you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. And just to circle back to one more thing, because I think, again, for like those in our audience who might not understand why you would even be willing to risk total oblivion. This is like pre the start of the standing army, right? I think there's a misconception. I know I've said this a lot in my own work. I believe I've said it on here with you, Karl, but like about how armies get paid. One of the biggest reasons or biggest things that you can do to pay someone is in the loot that is retrieved in the battlefield. And this is like doubly true if you're like a poorer knight when you have those arms and armor. Like we have a couple first-hand accounts from the Middle Ages, and not even just the Crusade, some individual fortunes basically transforming overnight because they're able to loot like armor and horses, and that's like a lot, and you can sell those, and all of a sudden it's like, we're back, we're so back, right? If you don't have an awful lot of anything, like, yeah, it's oblivion, but like you're risking, but if you survive and you get to loot and you wind up with someone's warhorse and like a suit of armor and whatever, that's, you basically made like a small fortune.
Pretty much.
Absolutely. One battle can change your life for better or worse.
Yeah, either direction.
Yeah. I mean, there were actually complaints after, I never can remember if it was Crécy or Poitiers, because at the height of the battle, when it was clear that the French were going to lose, the King of Bohemia, John of Luxembourg, who was blind by that time, but had been a famous warrior in his younger days, he was there. His son was there. It became clear that the French were just going to, get wiped off the map. And he said to his entourage, I mean, and he was a legitimate king, so he had quite the entourage. He said, "Link our bridles together, we will go forth and die." And they did. They linked, and so there's this blind guy running around in the middle, and he got killed. And that in itself is sort of like, okay, this is the downside of really believing in the ideals of being a knight. But on the other side, there are actually documents that show that people on the English side complained about the fact that he had, well, okay, there's two different takes that the English had. One is the blind guy should have just surrendered so we could ransom the crap out of him. Okay, he was a king. Okay, we could all go home much richer. Okay, which is what happened at the same battle with Jean II of France, right? They got like 15 million sous or livres or whatever out of him. And the second one was whoever it was who killed him isn't worthy of being a knight because he was blind. So you can see both sides of it right there. There is honor in fighting, and if you're fighting someone who can't defend themselves, there's no honor. But on the other hand, you want to fight him so you can capture him and get a lot of money out of him.
It's so almost
it's much more complicated.
Every night, it's almost like it's like 50% of every knightly order is people who genuinely believe in chivalry, and then people who understand, yeah, I'm just here for the paycheck.
Yeah, or yeah. I mean, they may go, no, the order has a purpose, but I have a sub-purpose. I am joining the order because I believe in it. Generally speaking, sure, they do good work, but I also need to make a name for myself. I need to be able to go home and say, "Dad, I made it." These are important things then and now, right? And probably by, again, the 14th century, this is all starting to change. The other thing that I think is never really dealt with in terms of its effect on this aspect of the knightly orders, and at least I've never read anything about it, is what did the Black Death do to the orders, to the knightly orders? Because they get absolutely nailed by the Black Death. And not only do they lose people, but the population from which they would normally recruit is also cut by a tremendous amount.
And the people who work their territories.
Yes,
the labor,
exactly.
The labor force of the commandery. So they lose human and financial power, basically.
Right. And then the plague comes back like every 20 years after that for an extended period of time. So it's so hard to recover. And these the knightly orders, at least, are already on the defensive by then, right? They're not expanding. The big three, the Teutonic, the Templars are gone by then, and the Hospitallers, their worlds are already contracting. Does this accelerate that? What does it do? If you think about it, if they're on roads or if they're in some other economic center, these are the places that got decimated by the Black Death.
Yep.
The Black Death is no respecter of persons. So
what made them survive is that it killed everyone, not just
Yes.
them. So it just
Yes.
it just lowered the bar in the whole field. Basically, it's like okay.
Well, and the thing that probably helped them though was that they did have an organization.
Yes, and
You
they
know?
were
Good
there
point,
was an organized like
they were used
the
to shipping supplies around and stuff like that. So
yeah. And they had like an idea on oh, Karl, help me out here, Manuel Island. 40
quarantine,
days quarantine.
epidemiology.
Yes, they had a working quarantine system already. So, you know.
yeah, oh yeah. We talked about that a little last time, I think. Yeah. So I mean, there are already things in play, but their organization probably helped them at the very same time that their numbers may have plummeted.
Yes, for sure.
So it helped people survive, but a lot of people didn't survive. And a lot of people didn't come by to replace the ones that hadn't survived.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, but yeah, I was reading an account of, I can't remember. It was the name of a manor in England. And for some reason, we have all the records from this period. And what it came down to is there was a brief dip in economic productivity, but within 6 months after the plague was gone, it was back at normal levels.
That's fast.
The population was cut by 45%, something like that, but they managed to keep going. 3 different bailiffs died during that period. Somebody just stepped into their spot and kept it going. But the lord that they were, turning over their produce to and stuff like that, they went through 4 of them in the space of like a year and a half. So, and you could see the same thing happen in a commandery, right? Oh, the commander somewhere has died. We need to send a new one. Well, he dies on the way there, or he gets there and dies immediately because you don't want to be on a ship with the bubonic plague.
Yeah, no kidding. It's actually a really good question, though, because I actually never thought about it. Because, how it affected, how the Black Plague affected orders and so on. And
I mean, I can speak from just base economics. Like, one of the reasons that it doesn't dip, or that it doesn't dip as dramatically as people think it would, is because a lot of times, at least in England and places that had feudalism en masse, like, it opens up the laws so serfs can finally travel, and people are willing to pay, and by people I mean the nobility, are willing to shell out more and better for people with higher skill sets. So what you have is like more efficient positions being shuffled around. Like, people who are really good at something are being shuffled to positions where they are really efficient because the money and the social mobility is there for the first time in that historical period. And then the places that don't, either those fiefs basically just cease to exist and just disintegrate into scale, like they're just gone, because they literally don't have enough people to keep them running. Or what happens is they attempt to train and bring in additional people, and then that is what causes the efficiency not to drop.
Yeah. Well, and it is a fluctuation. I mean, to take a title from Barbara Tuchman, the calamitous 14th century, long before the Black Death hit, Europe had basically hit the high level of population that it could support. Yeah, and
exactly. That was going to say that it's a bit of a control as elite thing.
Yes, absolutely. They're now cultivating marginal land. The population is too big, and then suddenly in the 1310s, you get failed harvest after failed harvest. You get some kind of climatic aberration where it rains for like 3 years straight. You get massive livestock epidemics as well. And so when the Black Death hits, it's hitting a population that's already declining, that's already reached its peak. Plus, the population that's still alive is weakened because of the events of the last 20 to 30 years. And so it's going to take out even more people. But after that, it becomes this weird situation where, as you said, Kyle, like, look, initially, in order to get things done, you're willing to pay more. But then 20, 30 years later, you're waking up to the fact that you have now changed the rules out of necessity, and you don't like it, and you want to change it back. And that's why in pretty much every country in Europe, there's a peasant revolt in the late 14th century as people were trying to force them back into the way it used to be.
Yeah, because once you give people social mobility and they realize, hey, things can be better, they're not going to go back.
Right.
Or at least they're not going to go back willingly. And there's really only so much you can do to oppress some of them.
Yeah.
And
then again, Black Death keeps coming back. You know,
Peasant Revolt sounds like a fantastic subject for a future discussion.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And I think just the population history of Europe, boy, doesn't that sound dry. But, you know, these are people dying all over the place, basically. You know, it's like, how many new ways can you find to die in medieval Europe and early modern?
Choose one of the four horsemen, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think Karl would get to choose one of the four horsemen since it's his game. So,
Karl, you get the horseman, buddy.
I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing because you realize that every organization, including the knightly orders, is under tremendous stress in this period of time, and some of them come out okay, some of them do not. You know, and everybody always tries to turn the clock back, and it doesn't work.
I mean, like an event like that with that level of the population, it's like it's world changing. You are not going to roll the clock back on that one.
That's what it was. It was a purge on the situation, like Tom said, because of the overpopulation and the over farming and the environment changing and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it hit at, depending on how you want to look at it, it either hit at the perfect time or the worst possible time.
Yeah, careful how to say that. Yeah, not the perfect timing, but like, well, yeah.
Yeah, in a process way, it's the perfect time. But, not if you want to be humane about it.
That's what it was.
I guess something else to sort of be aware of generally, because we talk about the Black Death, we talk about it in a European setting. It's really quite possible that the death toll or the death rate in non-European areas was much higher, which is hard to believe given how high it was. But there are these accounts of what it was like in places like Damascus and places like Cairo, where, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people died. And it appears to have struck India as well, but we don't really have records of that. So,
if I'm not mistaken, population centers are really larger, no?
Yeah, I mean, this is again, it's something that came out of Central Asia, right? And it went into China, it went to India, it went everywhere in the old world, so to speak. So we'll just never really know. But but maybe one of the things that saved the Hospitallers was that the people they were opposed to got hit even worse. You've lost half of your people on roads. That doesn't matter when 90% of the people in whatever ports would be the staging areas on the Asian mainland. If 90% of them are gone, you're okay. You're not. At least that's not going to be a problem.
It was a balanced out loss, so literally it was just a reduction of the bar. It was your opponents are reduced as well. So okay, so we're starting from here now.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and if you think about it, the pressure doesn't ramp up again until the Turks come in from Central Asia, and I don't want to say repopulate all those areas, but there is an influx of population.
Yes, I mean this is that the third wave of immigration. Yeah. Anyway, after the Black Death, the immigration that happens after.
I mean, they fill up Anatolia first, but then they start going down the coast, and so Antioch, places like that as well. So now suddenly the pressure's back on. But it isn't apparently through natural increase; it's through migration.
Okay, so Jamaican is asking, I kind of want to hear about beauticians for nights.
Well, that's what a squire was. A squire was a beautician, essentially.
Patch me up, polish the equipment.
So just
That's right. Yeah,
fetch my dinner.
My plume is off. You need to fix that. Yeah. I mean, that's what they were. They were maintenance workers. No, that we don't want to get silly about it. It's esquires were usually not. I mean, they weren't peasants. They were quite frequently boys
sons
of knightly rank. Their families were knights.
Student
this
knights.
was training. Yeah, it was to steal one from Kyle. It was your unpaid intern.
Yeah,
basically.
interns. That's exactly what the squire was, an intern. That's the perfect description.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they had to learn because their goal was to one day become you.
Mhm.
So
and it's like what you said about corporate successful corporate systems. Hey, you have to be a manager and a leader. You have to know what everyone is doing, and you have to have been there.
Yes,
So,
yes, and I would also say that squires probably got more benefits than unpaid interns do in today's corporations.
Really? Okay.
Although the vision of an 8-year-old struggling under a coat, under a coat of mail, that's you couldn't even see the poor kid, right?
strength training. They're getting stronger.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Now that looks good. Yeah.
No childhood obesity.
He engaged in strength training every day this week. Oh, well, that's good.
Exactly.
The poor kid's lying on the ground covered by 60 pounds of metal, basically.
And it's not tolerable to kill a squire anyway. Probably, I don't know. I mean, would the squire be killed? Are there accounts of many being killed?
No, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to kill the boys.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like a fairly tough and difficult, but safe-ish part of the system.
Well, in Shakespeare's Henry V, it actually is referred to like that when he talks about they're killing. Oh, I can't remember. Not the women. He doesn't say women. Killing the horses and the boys. So that tells you two things. One is you're not supposed to kill boys. Two is horses are more important than boys.
Yes.
You can always replace the boy. But if you've been training your horse to be a war charger for the last 5 years, you can't just replace that. But,
that's playing really dirty.
Yeah.
Yes, that is that's so mean. That's so mean. Because that's like, in a sense, that's striking at your honor as a knight, right?
Yeah, exactly. The mounted warrior. That is the ultimate status symbol.
Yeah, and it's like defacing your opponent's shield was an insult. If the shield had eventually when they actually got armorial bearing, you deface it and they go, "How dare you? That's my family."
That's a huge strike to the honor. You just remind me of something. So sorry to go back all hospitaller on everyone, but you just reminded me on that Castiglione, which Karl knows as well, a hospitaller knight in his manual. And okay, we're on an island and we have to know how to navigate. Okay, that's the previous talk. And I don't know if you remember. And because we are a knightly order, you should at least know how to ride a horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Even if you never are actually on one.
Yeah, even though we're on an island and we won't actually use horses in battle ever again. But yeah, there was cavalry. But anyway, yeah. So you got
actually that stimulates a question for me. So during the Great Siege of Malta, did the knights ever get on horses and sally out against the Turks?
There was a cavalry, yeah.
No.
There was a cavalry in one of the cities.
Yeah,
but most of them, no.
Yeah.
It was a light cavalry regiment, not a heavy, not what you'd expect, with a
not fully mounted
knight.
knight. No, not for sure not. No.
Yeah.
But a harassing cavalry, just to sally out and back, which was pretty effective in the siege.
Yeah.
It made some damage.
Well, again, logistics is king of the battlefield, right? It's the amount of supplies that you're going to need to ship to Malta to support the army.
Actually, one of the victories of the cavalry was when it went and destroyed the whole camp while the army was fighting in the siege.
Yeah,
which is like terrible, but perfect warfare.
Yeah,
but there weren't mounted knights, heavily armored mounted knights, like in an open field. No open fields.
Yeah, exactly.
No pitched battles. It was a seat,
And again, we go back to the Hospitallers again, but that's because they survived, right? But something we talked about last time is, in order to survive as a member, both of a knight and as a member of a knightly order, you really needed to adapt to changing circumstances. And the Hospitallers, when they got kicked off the mainland, that was a huge change because they weren't heavily armored cavalry anymore.
Yeah, like what Tom said, rebranding.
Yeah, no, it's true. And also, if they, you could argue from the point of view of a Western knight who was still heavily armored cavalry, you guys aren't really knights. You're wearing armor, but you're running around on ships. Are you really knights? But
in fact, they were called pirates from some like Venice,
Yeah. Again, that's the problem with defining a knight. Is apparently you can be on a ship and be a knight, but it runs counterintuitive to what, frankly, to the word that means knight in most languages, right? Yeah. Whether it's caballero or whatever, cavalier, it's all horse based, right?
Campaign today says they could have gotten seahorses.
They could have gotten
seahorses.
Yeah, seahorses. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Seahorses, it's crazy. I love that.
So yeah, I have we come full circle now?
We're
back to finding the knight, and
like,
one of the basic components of it doesn't actually work. And what it really comes down to is maybe you define it by its position in society, which is the knights were the people that fought. They were the ones that were allowed to fight. They went out and fought, and that's a knight.
Like what I loved what you described before. And in the pyramid of the feudal system, they are the building blocks which can be moved around, because you got king, dukes, peasants at the bottom. The knights are filling up all the gaps, and it was all based on warfare. So they had to be those building blocks, and then had to be warriors. The only common factor is the cavalier, the mounted part, which was part of the medieval war machine up until
and again, I think it gets overlooked sometimes because we concentrate on the fighting, but it was also the most effective way of traveling. In that sense, it's like the Hospitallers using ships.
That's what I said earlier, man. If I'm gonna have to fight in a battlefield, I want to be able to get the heck out if things go bad, or get to who I need to get to. Like mobility.
Well, think about how many battles are decided by or at least shaped by people that suddenly show up because they've managed to get there, and sometimes it matters,
or units that don't show up.
I mean, at Agincourt, the English freak out because finally one of the other groups of French shows up, and they don't know what's going on, so they don't pursue the French that are actually retreating, because they don't know if this new group of French that's appeared is going to attack them. As it turns out, they don't. But it meant that there was an important tactical decision that was made just because these guys managed to get there.
Okay,
and that's what horses can do for you.
Just to go back to what Franco mentioned earlier about the cavalry raid on the Ottoman camp in the Siege of Malta. One of the effects of that was that the attack on the walls was called off because they thought that that reinforcements had come in from Sicily. So again, the thing about moving stuff around and who can get where as fastest. So I think that movement thing is a very important pointer.
Yeah, it's a chess game then. But obviously then usually the winning parts would be the cavalry in most battles, as we see in history. So that's why knights are important.
Once you can bring it together, like whoever it was, I never can remember, Union General who said it's all about getting there firstest with the mostest.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the cavalry allow you to do,
And all societies recognize that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
In history, it was.
I think it's kind of interesting. We're talking about knights, and yet, like, we started it in 1066, which I think is a reasonable rough period to start it in. And then gradually, as we kind of went on, it was like the end date kind of kept creeping back. You know, there were still knights, but they weren't the same. And so you kind of end up with this situation where, okay, the idea of guns certainly helped.
Yeah.
But you know, long before the gun came along, longbow and crossbow worked pretty well against a lot of knights.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about the knights, and it's sort of the knights, however defined, are this kind of big trope in our view of the Middle Ages. And yet what we're really talking about is maybe 250 years. Right?
The high Middle Ages, basically.
Yeah.
Well, not even.
That's
not
the
even
1100 to 1350.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about. You know,
but it's a system which survived, basically, even though it had its aspects, like you're saying, which was started to nibble at it. It's basically kept surviving up until the French Revolution, you could say.
Right. Well, and if you were a French cavalryman, arguably to the First World War. But if you think about the Middle Ages, and again, we're talking about the general idea of when these things are. If the Middle Ages is the year 500 till 1500, which seems to sort of be that's 1,000 years, but we're totally talking about a quarter of that where knights were dominant.
I sort of lost the first quarter of this conversation, but I don't know if any of you, the what is a knight question, mentioned the Carolingian sort of.
We didn't go back. We started in 1066. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Because for me, that is when the knightly idea started, from Charlemagne, basically.
Yeah. So in the sense of a heavy cavalry, first of all.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the heavy cavalry. Okay, we got the Charlemagne idea of like actually bringing up a state, like an identity and fighting against and creating the empire, blah 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 blah. But then the group of mounted warriors that Charlemagne had, it is regarded many times as like the start of the knightly class in the Middle Ages. Correct me if I'm wrong, as I think I remember that being mentioned.
I think you're right, but I also think that you also hear I think you also hear that heavy cavalry lots of times just being called a Frankish war band.
Exactly.
You know,
but Charlemagne starts that process of giving them honor and giving them status. That's where the apart from the Roman, but the Roman use of cavalry, that's like mercenaries. So that doesn't give you the idea of knight.
Right.
But I mean, the Carolingian
I don't know,
does.
because then don't you have the Roman equestrian class? Even before that?
Yeah, the Equites are basically landowning nobility in the Roman Empire, because they're the only ones.
There you go. I forgot about those. There you go.
Yeah.
But I don't think they form actual armored cavalry units.
I don't think so. No, but
I think the Equitates are called Equitates because they own horses, basically.
Well, yeah. I mean, they have. Let me rephrase it. They have armor by classical Roman standards. Like that's. You know what I mean? Like nobody's really rocking cavalry at that point because there's a lot of cavalry innovations in the stirrup.
Yep.
That literally haven't been invented yet. But like they are landowning, relatively well equipped. Certainly more so by them. The kind of building blocks of foundation that you're talking about. If we are going off that definition, then there is a fair argument to be made that the Equites might be the first knights.
On the other hand, I don't. If I remember correctly, they didn't enjoy the same prestige that the infantry had at the time, for example.
Yeah.
Well, the Roman army, the infantry was sort of the jewel, sort of.
Yeah.
No. I think one of the problems is we're saying, well, these are the predecessors, we are the predecessors.
Exactly.
Which is fine, but that just means they're the predecessors. It doesn't mean that there's an unbroken link, and this is why I would argue against Charlemagne, is that because the whole structure of the empire splintered after his death.
Okay.
Okay.
It lasted like you mean it lasted one generation only, sort of?
Well, or I mean, it died over a century, basically. But you know what I mean? It's like it kind of goes away. And in fact, in terms, because one of the things about the knight is that I think it belongs at the bottom of that chain of loyalty, of personal loyalty. You know, that's sort of the classic feudal idea of the knight. And you don't get the situation because of the splintering of the Carolingian Empire and the fact that it continues to splinter.
Yeah, it was still a bit all over the place, even as a system.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, look, if you look at France, if you look at the former Carolingian Empire in the year 1000, let's say 950. No, let's say 11. Let's say the year 1000. If you had to pick an area of the Carolingian Empire that would eventually become a kingdom, a relatively unified, relatively centralized kingdom with people owning sort of feudal loyalty, you would actually have chosen East Francia. You would have chosen what became Germany. France was just a nightmare at that point.
Yeah.
Just complete warfare all the time. Okay. And then 100 years later, you switch it. Okay. So I think there needs to be a sort of a underlying structure that continues to exist within which the knight can emerge, so that by the time you get to 1100, you can look at a knight in France and he looks like a knight in Germany or whatever we're going to call it, and he looks like a knight in England, well, primarily because they're French. But I think that would be why I'm be fine with the Carolingian heavy cavalry being a predecessor. But in terms of continued development, I think it goes until, again, the peace of God idea, because that puts the religious imprimatur.
I was going to mention that. Then the Crusades gives it the stamp of approval, where it's here to stay for a few hundred years, basically.
Yes. Yeah. That's,
gentlemen, I must leave you, unfortunately, to duke the rest of this battle out. Sadly, I have to depart for my own crusades. But Karl, thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Probably wrapping up in a couple of minutes anyway, because it's really late now.
Oh no, it's okay. I will be watching the VOD later because I kind of want to see where this goes. But I have neglected other professional duties that I have to take care of, and I was like, I'm like white knuckle, I gotta be here. But you guys are awesome. Thank you again. Bye, guys.
Bye. Yeah. And yeah, I really apologize for the first half hour, because I mean I was like totally out of the conversation there.
Yeah, well, you look. I mean, you've got a great sound and picture right now. So,
but I'm using my mobile phone. That's why my laptop gave up on me. Okay. The phone has been like saved me for the rest of the hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we started with what's a knight, and I think the answer is you can't separate a knight from his environment. You know,
that's
that he is a creature of his time and place, and that essentially says, okay, that looks like a knight. So again, by definition, I'm going to say a samurai may look like a knight in many respects. He's not a knight.
Yeah,
you know,
you have. The knight term has to be European horse bound to a system, whether religious or national.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean,
upperish class, not like fully noble, but
not peasants.
And that, yes, exactly. It's the lowest tier of the upper class, basically. But so that's basically. If you chat GPT, what are the building blocks of a knight? Probably that's what comes up. Apart from the honorific parts, which you which you mentioned, which are the ones of today, basically. Which obviously those are
those are weird. But I think
there's none of those blocks.
Right, and I think one of the important things about being a knight is that you can move up. Whereas if you're on the other side of that dividing line in medieval society. You really can't. I mean, the best you can hope for is to become some kind of merchant. That's the only sort of crack in the structure that you can weasel through, right? And even that isn't particularly possible early on in the Middle Ages. So,
but you said that actually before, and I like that, because even or didn't you? Or maybe you reminded. But even if you're in the high nobility, you have less mobility in career, sort of.
Yeah.
The knight was the more mobile sort of career-wise, sort of. Unless, like you mentioned, unless you end up dead on the field, but which is occupational hazard.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think if you are, let's say, just a knight, you're sort of a common denominator among people that matter, if that makes sense. You can be a knight. You can be a knight and be a landowner. You can be a knight and be a professional warrior. You can be a knight and be a ruler. You know, you can fulfill a variety of functions. You can join a holy order. You know, you can do all sorts of things that if you're an earl or a count, you know, if you're on the continent and you're a count, you're probably not going, because you're of too high of a social rank, you're probably not going to say, I'm giving it all up and becoming a monk. Okay. But there are lots of knights who do. So it isn't that big of a stretch, especially if, again, you are on the losing end of something and, well, that's pretty much it for you. Well, I'm going to go and become a monk because that way at least I can get 3 meals a day, or maybe 2.
It seems like a
so I think it
pretty common retirement plan.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that is both the sort of the romance and the hard facts of being a knight. You know, it's sort of like he can be whatever he wants to be. You can present him as a psychopathic killer. You can present him as a high-minded idealist. He can travel, or he can stay at home and take care of his estate. He has a lot of options in the way that you want to think about him, and we have basically.
And we haven't even spoken about the
It's complicated.
Well, you mentioned about being a psychopath, which obviously many would have been, but then there would be the common rule set of the knight, the codes of chivalry. Well, I don't think we have time to talk too much about that now, but there seems to be that. Karl asked, "Is there a rule book? Is there like a manual for a knight?" No, but yes, there was this
not a rule book.
General
like
assumptions.
I asked about a definition of which is a different thing.
And when I was doing my research on the hospitallers, on how when they used to become a hospitaller knight, they actually referred to the secular code of chivalry when like defending the poor and the innocent, blah 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 blah. That wasn't just on the religious orders; that was in all the knights. The code
but
of
I
chivalry.
think that was actually promulgated by the Pope, even if it, then again, that's part of the peace of God. Don't fight on Sundays, you know, stuff like that. We're sort of
control the violent Europeans.
It was because so many knights were in fact psychopathic killers.
Exactly.
You know.
But it became a culture set then, you know. It became,
what can we do about this? This is tearing Europe apart. I know. We'll tell them they can only be psychopathic killers 6 days a week. That should solve the problem. But and then as with everything else, it sort of grew, I think. So by the time you get to the 12th century, you're now getting this idea that, chivalry involves things not just like jousts and stuff like that. Because if you go back and look at the history of jousting, early jousts were basically put everybody in a field and have them beat the crap out of each other.
Before it became organized.
And then it gradually became formalized.
We're losing knights just from sport. We need to fix this.
Yeah. Exactly. All he did was fall off his horse, and now he's dead because he drowned in the mud. Oh well. But it sort of, just like jousting kind of became these, dinner shows. Yeah. The same thing sort of happened if you think about, courtly love and stuff like that. You have people like Eleanor of Aquitaine saying, "Oh, the perfect knight also needs to be able to recite poetry and do a song."
That's the Renaissance, when the knight becomes a courtier.
Yeah, well, I mean, even before that, I mean, obviously that's the origin of it. It takes a long time because, as you can imagine, the psychopaths are like, I don't need to make up poetry, okay? But if they were psychopaths and actually geniuses, they would say there is a poetry in decapitation.
Probably Teutonic knight.
If you're a Teutonic knight, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it right. If you hit him from behind, the spine takes the force out of the blow.
Some samurai vibes there as well. But anyway.
Yes, exactly. So I think being a knight becomes different things for different people at different times, and it becomes increasingly formalized, and then eventually becomes the courtier, right? And you get these. There's a book. Do I have it in here? There's a book by an English historian named Lisa Jardine, and it's just a little tiny book. It's about 100 pages, and it's about the assassination of William of Orange, William the Silent, in 16 whatever it was, and it has one of the most marvelous chapters in it of any book I've ever read, because you open it up and the first page is a full portrait of, I don't know, some Elizabethan courtier, and he's dressed in Tudor garb. He looks like he's straight out of an HBO show, but right, like hanging from the middle of his belt is a pistol, and she says this is not a mistake. This is carefully thought out. He said, because by the 16th century, even though many noblemen continued to fight, it had become so formalized that you could have symbolic references to it. So if you look at the Bayeux Tapestry, people have, swords. They have axes. They have real weapons. By the time you get to the 16th century, it has become so formalized that essentially, and psychologically formalized, that it's really important to have a pistol sitting in the middle of your groin, because it combines weapon, masculinity, and sex. And then she shows, I don't even know how many pictures, portraits of gentlemen, and they're all exactly like that.
Okay.
So the idea of, okay, what starts off as just, I'm going to hit you really hard until your armor breaks, is now a psychological, I'm a knight. How can you tell I'm a knight? I have a weapon that not many people can afford. It is deadly. It says I'm a man. It is overtly sexual in its placement, but it's all symbolic now. So it's sort of the end of that cycle of formalization. So anyway, I don't know. I have read that book probably 10 times just because it's so good on stuff like that. But that's what it meant to be a knight, I mean, the guy in the picture was a knight. Had he ever fought? I don't know. But that's what it meant to be a knight by then. And of course, he was being given, shiny bits of metal by the sovereign as well. So
this was 1600s, right?
Yeah. No, this is actually in the 1560s. There's 1570s.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So
that's not even that late in the day.
No, well, it's like all historical processes, it takes a long time.
Yeah,
but 1560s, you have the term courtier already, so that's when things are changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not medieval anymore.
When does Castiglione write his book on the courtier? It's somewhere in there, isn't it?
I think 30s, I want to say.
20s, 30s.
Yeah.
Before.
It's I mean, it's all in the ballpark because the Italians are, in front of everybody else, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it'll percolate up to Northern Europe at some point.
Eventually,
You have to wait for the translation.
yeah, I mean,
That's right. That's right.
In England.
And the bad part is that the first translation will be into Latin, so it's even worse. But yeah, so the whole idea of a knight is completely different by the time you get it. It's no longer really about fighting.
Yeah.
But think about how long people have continued to wear swords. I mean,
apart from the fact that they were useful up to the end.
19th century.
Yeah. You got the evolution of firearms, which was slow, but yeah. But then the sword had the honorific part, which helped it survive.
Right. And it's a great gift,
absolutely.
Yeah, the whole thing,
I mean, if anyone wants to give me something, a sword is always a great gift.
Well, and I think Nelson was given something like 25 or 30 ceremonial swords, after his various victories. The city of London would vote 100 guineas towards a ceremonial sword, and he'd get another one, and he probably had a room that was just the sword room. Throw it in there. I got so many of these things. But the thing about the 16th century is that for the first time, so William of Orange was the first head of state who was killed with a handgun.
Okay.
Ironically, one of his great enemies, the Duc de Guise, who was the head of the Catholic League in France, was assassinated, I think, 3 or 4 years earlier with a handgun. So suddenly it became all the rage to shoot at people.
Yeah, that shows the changing times.
Yes. Okay. You can get close with a handgun. You're not looking across a battlefield. So suddenly everybody, we always say that, armored cavalry started to die when guns came in. I mean, that's true to a certain degree, certainly. But suddenly you don't even have to be on the battlefield to be shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, different times.
Yeah, you could say that.
But yeah,
and yet not so different.
Also true. Yeah. I mean, with everything we've talked about, it's like sometimes it feels like modern day, just with a different coat of paint on it.
Yes, yeah. Stranger fashions. Although by next year, maybe those will be in again.
Who knows? Okay, we're going to have to wrap up now because it really is getting late. But you both, thank you so much for this discussion. One thing I found really interesting is that something you mentioned, Tom, is that the time period of what we think of as the archetypal knight was really narrow. It's like, what, 250 years, you said?
Yeah.
So that was
let's say from 1100 to 1350, and then it all starts to decline almost immediately.
Well, like many things, you have the pinnacle, short periods. The rise and the decline take longer because when you're
right. And again, it's different in different places too. Let's not forget that. But I just always think of Edward III who is the exemplar, who is founds the Garter, the whole bit. I mean, it's like the high watermark, and yet by the end of his reign, in 1377, he's a sad, demented old man. The economy of England is just destroyed by his continual wars in France. His mistress is selling offices on the open market. This is not good. And
absolutely.
And that's kind of the end of that period, I think.
And it matches that same era where it starts to decline. Not decline, but starts to decline is the word. I guess.
Certainly change. It certainly changed. Starts to change.
Yeah. But I think the decline is a word because it doesn't mean it totally gets obliterated as a system. It just starts to decline. Being
a knight is still important.
Yeah.
And it still has
factors
but it doesn't mean what it used to mean. And so by the time you get to the next phase of the 100 Years' War, the English army is put together completely differently.
Exactly.
In a way, you could say it's not as shiny as it used to be.
Exactly. So.
Okay. Sorry, Karl.
In a way, you could say that it has lost its shiny kind of thing.
Forever, so you should cut us off.
Yep. Okay, I'm just going to cut you off now. Go home.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm just
Okay, but
enjoying the
seriously,
fact I
thank you
have
so
a
much
really good signal.
for this discussion.
Yeah, this is good, isn't it?
No
Oh yeah, I mean,
lag.
like, hopefully next time we'll
Yeah.
be able to
You hate
figure
to
out.
waste it, right?
So, any closing
Sorry,
thoughts,
Karl.
either of you?
No, I'll pass because we'll just keep
What?
going.
Yeah. I think we're good.
Okay, so thank you so much both, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll figure out another subject for next time, and we'll try to see who we can wrangle. And we'll definitely need to see about Franco's connection next time. But again, thank you so much, and have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.